body cam video from Houston police shows the moments a little boy was caught in the crossfire after his mother opened fire inside the lobby of televangelist Joel Osteen's church earlier this month.
Joel Osteen's career is on the brink. Despite Lakewood Church's success, a tragic event changed everything. One afternoon, a woman with a history of mental illness opened fire inside the church, leaving several victims. While the media covered the chaos, one truth was hidden: Osteen himself was affected. Now, as the situation worsens and cracks appear in the church's foundation, his reputation is under fire. The congregation is uneasy, and whispers of deeper secrets are growing louder. The future of Lakewood and Osteen himself has never been more uncertain. Join us as we dive into heartbreaking news that happened to Joel Osteen.
They were repetitive, boom, 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 boom.
The sound sent the congregation scrambling as security returned fire, killing the shooter.
If it weren't for them, the number of casualties and victims would have been much higher. There is no doubt.
Joel Osteen's career is about to be over. Despite the years of positivity and hope that Lakewood Church has brought to millions, an unimaginable event took place, one that shattered the very foundation of faith and safety within its walls. It happened on an otherwise ordinary afternoon. The congregation had gathered as they always did, their voices lifted in worship, unaware that in just moments their sanctuary would turn into a scene of horror. A woman, later identified as someone with a history of severe mental illness, entered the church armed with a gun. Before anyone could react, she opened fire. The sounds of gunshots echoed through the massive hall, sending worshipers into a panic. Screams filled the air as people scrambled for cover. Security attempted to intervene, but the damage had already been done. Several lives were lost that day, innocent people who had come seeking peace, only to meet an untimely and violent end. Among those affected was Joel Osteen himself. While the full details of his injuries were kept away from the public eye, whispers soon began to circulate claims that his condition was far worse than officially stated. Some said he had been wounded. Others suggested that the psychological toll of witnessing such a tragedy had left him deeply shaken, unable to return to the pulpit with the same unwavering confidence. And then, something even more concerning began to unfold. Osteen's health and mental state seemed to deteriorate. Those closest to him noticed the shift: his energy had waned, and the relentless optimism he once exuded appeared to be cracking under the weight of what had happened. The church itself, once an emblem of joy and faith, found itself in a crisis it had never faced before. But this was not the only storm Osteen would have to weather. From financial controversies to whispered scandals, from his carefully cultivated image to the rumors that had followed him for years, a closer look at Joel Osteen's career and personal life reveals that this tragedy may have only accelerated an inevitable downfall. Join us as we dive into the heartbreaking news surrounding Joel Osteen.
Well, you know, Gales, our doors have always been open. We received people even as soon as the water started receding, but we worked with the city constantly. The city set up a shelter about 4 miles from here that can house 10,000 people, showers, dormitories, kitchens, security, all that. They didn't need us as a shelter at that point. They wanted us to be a distribution center, things like that. So we said, fine, you do that, we'll do our part, never dreaming that we'd have so many people needing shelters. When they filled up, they said we need shelters, we started our shelter. But you know, this notion that we would turn people away or that we're not here for the city.
And then, something even more concerning began to unfold. Osteen's health and mental state seemed to deteriorate. Those closest to him noticed the shift: his energy had waned, and the relentless optimism he once exuded appeared to be cracking under the weight of what had happened. The church itself, once an emblem of joy and faith, found itself in a crisis it had never faced before. But this was not the only storm Osteen would have to weather. From financial controversies to whispered scandals, from his carefully cultivated image to the rumors that had followed him for years, a closer look at Joel Osteen's career and personal life reveals that this tragedy may have only accelerated an inevitable downfall. The rise of a prosperity preacher. Joel Osteen's path to prominence was not one he initially envisioned for himself. Born into a family with a deep-rooted pastoral tradition, he was the son of Joel Osteen, the founding pastor of Lakewood Church. Growing up in Houston, Texas, faith was an integral part of his upbringing, but Joel had no desire to become a preacher. Instead, he focused on the church's media production, overseeing its television broadcasts for 17 years. It wasn't until his father's sudden passing in 1999 that Joel stepped onto the stage for the first time. Thrust into leadership, he quickly transformed Lakewood Church into one of the largest congregations in the world. His messages, which emphasized positivity, prosperity, and God's favor, resonated with millions. He authored best-selling books, expanded his church's reach through televised sermons, and became one of the most recognizable Christian figures in America. Under his leadership, Lakewood moved into the former Compaq Center, a massive arena in Houston that once housed the city's NBA team. Weekly attendance soared beyond 45,000, and donations flooded in.
Good morning, George. And once the church started accepting those donations, they started piling up quickly. The volunteers are lining up once again this morning. You can take a look at part of the work that they've done so far. A mountain of towels on one side, and on this side, a ton of baby supplies.
I promise you, we'll make you feel right at home.
He's the famous TV pastor leading one of the largest congregations in the country.
If you're ever in our area, please stop by and be a part of one of our services.
Joel Osteen, head of Houston's Lakewood Church, but for the past few days, his megachurch has come under mega criticism. Some questioning why the 600,000 square foot facility didn't immediately open its doors to desperate evacuees.
We're going to come right back and get them, okay?
It'll be okay.
As the floodwaters rose, the church posting online that it was inaccessible due to severe flooding. The reaction online, fierce. Tweets like this saying, when Joel Osteen has a gigantic church and $10 million home in Houston, but is only offering prayers to people affected by Harvey. And the already heavily criticized Joel Osteen isn't helping himself by not opening that mega church of his, and leads me to ask, what would Jesus do? Some even posting photos like these, seeming to show the church grounds totally flood-free.
We have food over here.
But Lakewood officials providing these pictures as proof that there was lots of water just a foot from the top of their floodgates, and saying the doors have been opened.
Our doors have always been open. We have been a shelter like they were a shelter from the very beginning.
And now the church up and running as an official shelter, already filled with giant piles of donations and widening lines of cars with volunteers waiting to sign up to help.
The critics and the controversies. However, success came at a price. Critics accused Osteen of preaching a gospel devoid of substance, a feel-good message that prioritized material wealth over spiritual depth. His doctrine of prosperity, which suggested that faith and positive thinking could lead to financial blessings, became a point of contention. While Osteen amassed wealth and influence, questions arose about his financial transparency. Reports surfaced about his luxurious lifestyle, including a multi-million-dollar mansion and private jets. Unlike traditional pastors, Osteen famously did not take a salary from the church, instead making his fortune through book sales and speaking engagements. However, skeptics argued that this distinction was merely a technicality, as Lakewood Church's donations and resources directly supported his brand. And then there were the scandals. In 2021, a plumber discovered hundreds of envelopes filled with cash hidden inside a bathroom wall at Lakewood Church, raising suspicions about financial mismanagement. Though no direct evidence linked Osteen to the discovery, the incident fueled speculation about the true nature of his organization's finances. The fall from grace. The tragedy that struck Lakewood Church was not just a test of faith, but a revelation of fragility. In the aftermath of the shooting, Osteen's absence from the public eye only intensified speculation. Was he recovering from an injury that had been covered up? Had the trauma forced him into seclusion? Or was there something deeper, something the church was desperate to keep hidden? Slowly, the once unshakable empire began to show cracks. Attendance numbers reportedly declined as members questioned Osteen's leadership. Rumors of internal power struggles surfaced, with some insiders suggesting that Victoria Osteen, his wife, had begun assuming a more dominant role in church affairs. The couple's marriage, long seen as a pillar of strength, was now the subject of scrutiny. Were they truly united, or had the pressures of public life driven a wedge between them? As social media exploded with theories and speculation, one thing became clear: Joel Osteen was no longer the untouchable figure he once was. The tragedy at Lakewood Church had changed everything. The people who once looked to him for guidance were now questioning the very foundation upon which his ministry was built. What happens next? In the wake of the crisis, the future of Lakewood Church remains uncertain. Will Osteen make a triumphant return, proving his resilience in the face of adversity? Or has his time in the spotlight come to an end, overshadowed by the weight of controversy and tragedy? For now, the world watches as one of the most influential figures in modern Christianity stands at a crossroads. The legacy he spent decades building is now hanging by a thread. Whether he can reclaim his place or whether this marks the downfall of his empire is a question that only time will answer.
In speaking with a lot of those volunteers, we learned a lot of them aren't necessarily Joel Osteen viewers or part of the congregation here. They just told us they're from Houston and they want to help. George?
Okay, Victor, thanks. Pastor Osteen now does join us from Lakewood Church as well. Thank you for joining us this morning. Pastor Osteen, let's get right to the controversy. We did see that post on Sunday from your church saying it was inaccessible, yet so many weighed in showing that didn't seem to be the case. So what went wrong here?
Well, George, first off, the building was inaccessible. The floodwaters went down. I mean, this building flooded in 2001. It had 10 feet of water in the lower bowl, and we put up floodgates, and it kept it from going over. It's only a foot away. But you know, I think, George, the narrative is that we didn't want to take people in or that we didn't open in time. It's totally not true. We were here for people. We were a shelter. We were taking people as soon as the floodwaters receded, when several people came here to take them in. But the city has a shelter 4 miles from here. We work with the city all the time, and when their shelter was totally full, they started bringing people over here, and here we are again today doing it like we did in 2001 when we housed 3,000 people. So I don't know, I think somebody created that narrative that somehow we were high and dry, and none of that is true. This building, it was a safety issue, and we took people in from the very beginning.
You do seem to be up and running now, but any lessons learned from this?
Well, I think there always is, but I think, George, sometimes it's, when somebody's not in this situation where we had nobody in this facility. We were fearing that it would flood. The last thing we would do is put people in it right at the beginning. But yeah, we would probably do some things differently, obviously. But my niece was stranded right across the street from this building the first 2 days of the flood or 1 day of the flood on the freeway. So it was a big flood, and it affected all of the people that run this facility as well.
The cracks in Osteen's empire deepen. As the tragedy at Lakewood Church continued to cast a long shadow, more details began to emerge about the inner workings of Osteen's ministry. What was once seen as an unshakable empire of faith and prosperity was now being examined under a much harsher lens. The whispers of financial irregularities, the growing concerns about the lavish lifestyle he led, and the increasing number of disillusioned former followers all began converging into a full-blown crisis. A tarnished reputation. In the months following the shooting, Osteen's absence from the pulpit became more noticeable. While Lakewood Church assured its congregation that their leader was simply taking time to heal and reflect, others weren't so convinced. Rumors of internal strife began to circulate. Was Osteen losing control over his own church? As attendance numbers continued to drop, a new narrative emerged. Those who had once ardently defended Osteen's teachings now expressed doubts about whether he had truly been as forthcoming about the events surrounding the attack as he claimed. Why was there no transparency about his own injuries? Why was the church so secretive about its security failings? The pressure only intensified as former church members came forward with shocking allegations. Some spoke of coercion, manipulation, and the expectation that loyalty to the church meant unwavering financial support. Others claimed that the moment they stopped donating, they were treated differently, almost as if their faith had been measured in dollar amounts rather than devotion. The prosperity gospel under fire. Joel Osteen's philosophy had always been rooted in the idea of prosperity, a belief that faith and positive thinking would lead to tangible, financial success. This ideology, often referred to as the prosperity gospel, had been criticized for years, but now, in light of recent events, it was coming under renewed scrutiny. The shooting incident at Lakewood Church forced people to reconsider Osteen's message. If faith and prosperity were so deeply connected, how did such a horrific event occur in a place that, by his teachings, should have been protected by divine favor? Where was the abundance for those who lost their lives that day? The backlash intensified as more critics pointed out that the prosperity gospel had often been used to exploit vulnerable individuals. Those who had given their last dollar, believing Osteen's promise that it would lead to financial blessings, now felt betrayed. Investigative reports surfaced showing that while many of his followers struggled to make ends meet, Osteen himself lived in a sprawling multi-million-dollar mansion, drove expensive cars, and flew on private jets. Financial investigations and legal pressure. As controversy mounted, it wasn't long before legal scrutiny followed. Independent financial watchdogs began looking into the church's finances, questioning how donations were being allocated. Several investigative reports suggested that a significant portion of the money meant for community outreach and charitable programs was instead funneled into maintaining Lakewood's massive operating costs, including state-of-the-art production equipment, high-end renovations, and large-scale marketing campaigns to keep Osteen's brand thriving.
Well, first off, thank Chief and the mayor and Chief Pena and all of these men and women did an amazing job. And it's just, you said it, Chief, it could have been a lot worse. Of course, we're devastated. I mean, we've been here 65 years and have somebody shooting in your church. But, you know, we don't understand why all these things happen, but we know God's in control. And we're going to pray for that little 5-year-old boy and pray for the lady that was deceased, her family and all, and the other gentleman. But I don't know, it's just kind of in a fog, but, you know, just believe that, you know, we're going to stay strong. We're going to continue to move forward. And there are forces of evil, but the forces that are for us, the forces of God are stronger than that. Yes. So we're going to keep going strong and just, you know, doing what God's called us to do, lift people up and give hope to the world. Again, I want to thank all these gentlemen because, you know, I can only imagine if it would have happened during the 11 o'clock service. We were in between services going into the Spanish service. So, you know, if there's anything good of it, you know what, she didn't get in there and do a whole lot worse damage. So we thank God for that He's watching over all of us. And as the chief says, we're going to keep going strong and bringing hope to the world. But thank you again, gentlemen.
Thank you, Pastor.
Then came the leaks. Anonymous sources from within the church disclosed that there had been growing concern over how Lakewood handled its finances. Some even alleged that certain transactions were being deliberately concealed, raising the possibility of financial misconduct. The most damning moment came when it was revealed that the IRS had been quietly conducting an inquiry into Lakewood Church tax-exempt status. While churches in the U.S. are generally exempt from taxation, they are still required to adhere to strict guidelines regarding financial transparency. The accusations that Osteen had been using the church's funds to enrich himself threatened to strip Lakewood of its nonprofit status, which would be a financial disaster. A church divided. Internally, Lakewood Church was beginning to fracture. Senior members of Osteen's leadership team reportedly began questioning his ability to continue as their leader. Some were deeply troubled by the public perception of their church, while others were simply concerned about the potential legal and financial ramifications of Osteen's decisions. There were whispers that a split was imminent, that factions within the church were preparing to distance themselves from Osteen in order to preserve their own credibility. Several high-profile members resigned, citing philosophical differences as their reason for stepping away. Victoria Osteen, Joel's wife and co-pastor, was said to be one of the few people still standing firmly by his side. Yet even she had begun assuming more responsibility in managing church affairs. Some speculated that she was positioning herself as the church's next leader, should Joel be forced to step down. The public's growing skepticism. As social media amplified the controversies surrounding Osteen, public sentiment shifted dramatically. Where once he had been a revered figure, a symbol of unwavering faith, he was now a subject of widespread ridicule. Memes mocking his lavish lifestyle flooded the internet. Comedians took aim at his prosperity gospel, pointing out the irony that the people funding his wealth were the same ones struggling financially. Hashtags such as Osteen Exposed and Prosperity Scam trended across platforms, signaling a cultural shift against televangelists who prioritized wealth accumulation over genuine faith leadership. Even mainstream media outlets, which had once given Osteen glowing coverage, began airing investigative reports that painted him in a much less favorable light. The combination of the shooting, financial scandals, and declining trust created an image of a man whose empire was crumbling before his eyes. What's next for Joel Osteen? Despite the mounting pressure, Joel Osteen remains defiant. Publicly, he continues to insist that his ministry is stronger than ever, that the controversies are nothing more than the work of detractors trying to bring down a man of faith. Yet behind closed doors, sources claim that he is struggling to find a way forward. Legal battles loom on the horizon. His church's finances are under more scrutiny than ever before. Attendance continues to dwindle, and former supporters are turning away in disappointment. The question remains, can Joel Osteen survive this storm? For now, the world watches as one of the most influential figures in modern Christianity stands on the precipice of his greatest challenge yet. Whether he can rebuild what has been lost or whether this marks the true end of his career is a story that is still unfolding. But one thing is certain: Joel Osteen's reign as the untouchable leader of the prosperity gospel is coming to an end.